Welcome to the CNCF working group meeting for December 13th. So as always, these meetings are recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, go ahead and hop off or turn off your camera if that's what you don't want to be recorded by. Um, Today we don't have an agenda, nothing on the agenda. So kind of a free discussion if anyone has any topics they want to bring up related to IoT, Edge, CNCF, and so on. Yeah. I know Joel's connectivity isn't the greatest, so I'll start off by maybe asking Leon, maybe you could tell us more about what area you work in.
So I am quite new to this. I'm just attending the meeting so I can get something like that. So one of the projects is I'm trying to try out pin on the screen or something like that for that quantum cloud. So I mean, it's still trying to figure out API stuff, but it's not my major. I usually work with this Kubernetes, so it's a new thing for me.
I couldn't hear you super well, Leon, but I am at a coffee shop, so it could be my end. Steve, how's the connection for you?
His audio seemed garbled to me, so I didn't hear well either. So I don't think it's you.
Is this better?
Not very
Keep
much. Hello?
Hello, is this better now?
It's
that
a
is a
little
little
better.
better.
Yeah, it's Linux, so it's sometimes something fake. But yeah, I was saying that I'm just attending these meetings these days because I'm just trying to get a bit of insight into the IoT stuff. But project-wise, I am trying, like, once I'm on board, I'll be trying out Pin, I think, and Wasm Cloud on the um, IoT devices that I have. But it's like a side thing for me. Not like I'm not actively working.
Very cool. I would love to hear how those investigations have been going, putting like Spin and Wasm Cloud and other WebAssembly runtimes on those small devices. Have you been able to complete any full scenarios there, or are you kind of just starting with that?
No, actually, I try to start and then something or the other comes in the way. So probably this month, since it's like slowing down, so I'll probably get time. Test it. It's the two different architectures. One is like usual ARM, and then there is an Riscui. So Riscui is what I'm trying to sort of work on, but I haven't had the chance. But yeah, I will put both of these. Like I speak frequently with the folks at Pin because they had come to India also, so I know a few people from there. So I will work with them probably by getting to the later next meeting maybe if I have anything.
I didn't fully, I think you got garbled again, but it sounds like you have your devices, but not necessarily the time right now, but that you're going to try it out soon.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully soon.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes. Um, yeah. Joel, are you back? Okay, I'm gonna say that's his network is still off. Well, just an announcement. We had our second white paper on application design for the Edge. That is moving through another round with the CNCF marketing team, but it sounds like we might have that published by the CNCF soon. So we'll have a link for that soon. So that's exciting. on that realm, and we'll be sure to send that out to everyone as well. On this note of WebAssembly, Steve, the last meeting we talked about what we should do for our maintainer track submission for KubeCon Europe. And one of the topics that people are very interested in is WebAssembly. And so we talked about the potential of maybe collaborating with the WASM working group on like a shared maintainer track talk about WebAssembly and the Edge. And we are also interested in brainstorming other topics too to present for KubeCon Europe. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I don't know, usually those maintainer track talks have a second CFP announcement. I don't actually know if that's gone out yet. But it typically is a few weeks after the close of the regular CFPs. So probably soon if it's not already out.
Yeah, I have the link for it and we shared it out.
Okay.
It's December 31st is the deadline. So we have a few more weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a good candidate. The other one I've been kicking around is, we still have that effort I started of that list of open source edge related projects. Now, I know for a fact I'm not going to be able to go to Europe for the event, so I can't participate in it myself. But that might be one to keep in the back burner. Maybe not for Europe, but for North America. But those are the only two things I can think of. The joint one with WASM sounds like, especially if you bond two groups together, I think it probably increases the likelihood of an acceptance.
Yeah, I think I guess first of all, to understand the first one you were mentioning on the IoT Edge project, what do you envision that one being like? Like basically presenting an edge landscape or
I think so, yeah. It might not be fully, I don't think we can do a landscape until we get buy-in from the CNCF and get a procedure. If you know how the old landscape works by people submitting pull requests into GitHub with all kinds of things. I think there might even be license agreement submittals and artwork and things like that. And it's pretty involved. There's no way that would get in place by March because the old one took way longer than that. But just basically an announcement that we are either contemplating doing such a thing and looking for community feedback, or if the CNCF wants to commit to it, it could be an announcement that they'd expect that the program would start at some date in the future. I don't think it's likely it would be in place by the time, certainly not in place by KubeCon Europe, which is in March. I think at this point, though, I think just an announcement that we have this effort underway, even if it isn't fully formalized yet. It's only people who show up to meetings of this group that are aware it exists, I think. Well, maybe the people in the Eclipse group are as well. But we could get a little more visibility of that. If you wanted, if you did the WASM and maybe tack that in as a slide at the end, that might be worthwhile. But something on that order would be the only thing I can think of at the moment for content for a maintainer track.
Yeah, on the WASM one, I wasn't currently planning on going to KubeCon EU. So I think that's the other thing to consider is who would we want to present that? We normally have one of the chairs participate in the presentation and then it jointly with maybe a member, but if one of the members have done something with WASM and the Edge, that could be an opportunity to present that jointly with the WASM working group. So that's another thought. But I've also been thinking about going, but regardless, we should probably start writing up what a CFP like that would look like, and then we can later think about who we could send to give it.
Yeah, especially if it's due December the 31st. You pretty much have to get, well, you have to get the submit in. I'd be happy to review the submit, but I'm not going to be, listed as a speaker on it myself. But if somebody else wants to organize it, particularly with a WASM tie-in, I would think Liam doesn't appear to be here today, but I think he would have an interest in that.
That's true, yeah. Well, I'll start drafting something up and talk to the WASM working group folks and see if definitely by next meeting we should have that whole CFP drafted and reviewed, since that's only a few days before it's the deadline. So I can take the point on writing that CFP and reaching out to the WASM working group folks and seeing if that's something we want to follow through on.
As a fallback, I think actually if the WASM working group had one of the chairs there, that might be good enough for chair representation, because I think a chair has to submit it. A regular member, I don't believe, is allowed to submit it. But if we just had one coming from the WASM group, and then the person coming from the IoT Edge was simply a regular member, that's probably good enough.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, well, if you're going to take point on that, that's good. If I'll volunteer to be available to offer review comments as it gets put together.
Yeah, same.
Perfect.
And hey, Kate, did you want to? That's basically next week. Or are we going to have a meeting on the 27th?
I think our next meeting is scheduled for the 27th. Are you wondering if we? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it seems like next week is the last kind of full, or mostly full working week before the holidays coming up. So just
maybe the best thing to do is to start prep on it ASAP. Offline, not in a Zoom meeting, but in a, just in a Slack channel or something. That would seem to expedite things, and you probably have to do it anyway. In the past, when we worked on these proposals, we've often had supplemental Zoom meetings anyway. So perhaps we should entertain that the Zoom meeting on the 27th isn't the culminating point of this. In fact, historically, I think sometimes during these holiday seasons, we've offered polls to membership on whether we wanted to even cancel the meetings that fall in these holiday periods. And often the voting on that comes out in favor of canceling.
That's a good point. Maybe we move our meeting to next week. Or have like an optional one next week for folks interested in reviewing the CFP. I'll go ahead and create a doc now. And I can link it to them, or I'll do that right after. I'll basically draft something. I do best with just like a one take draft. So I'll go ahead after this, by end of day, draft up a CFP and link it into the meeting notes today. And then we can look at that and maybe review it all next week.
That sounds good. If you can marshal the efforts to get the people from the WASM community, because I think you're the best point of contact there. And let's get I think it's key to get a list of names of people who would be presenting, even if they're tentative, kind of a superset of the people who might present, if you will. so that we know, because those are mandatory to put on the submit. So you pretty much have to have them. You can cancel later if it turns out you can't go, but it's pretty tough to get a late ad. So are you still there, Kate?
Yes, I am. I was just
Okay.
reading Leon's
Oh.
comment. Cool. Yeah. I will start this discussion and all of this and follow up. And I mean, I also I'll think about whether I can make the time work to go too. So I actually am submitted already on another talk, but yeah, so we'll see. Okay. And great. So I think we've covered that point of conversation. I think another thing that I think would be interesting to discuss is maybe a strategy for getting speakers to come to meetings. Does anyone have thoughts on like how we should go about gathering more speakers or the way we have in the past?
Well, my thoughts are what's worked in the past is meeting physically with speakers at physical meetings, like the KubeCons, and then letting people know, even if they're in vendor booths and things, that this is an available forum. Now, I think that I often have the experience that I can get 10 people who say, yes, I'd love to do that, and I'll get in touch. And then there's no follow through in 80% of those cases. Now, if I have a feeling that if I had the time to go back to them to do reminders, I might be able to resurrect some of those, but I've never been in the position where I had that kind of time to go follow up on those initial conversations. But I've gotten a lot of interest from people who said they'd like to do it going forward, and it just disappears. There's not much follow-up. Now, that to be said, about some of the better talks we've had have come in just through that method of, striking up a conversation with somebody and having them show up. The other thing is just to keep an eye on announcements and things with open source and Edge and trying to contact people. There's one I just dropped in the chat that I just came across in the last few days because there was a presentation on it at Open Source Summit in Japan. And that is that there's a group that's gotten together to try to build a fork of the former HashiCorp vault that recently underwent a license change, like a lot of the other HashiCorp open source projects. And it looks like the LF Edge Foundation, it's not like one of these officially managed projects at this stage. But if you look at that link I provided, it looks like they've at least opened up a forum for this effort to start a project they're calling Open Bow, which is forking from the Vault project before the license change. And I know that this whole area of credential management is of great interest at Edge. And kind of the Vault project was used not just at Edge, but in large public clouds at all. But there was a group of people applying that to manage credentials at Edge. So I think that's potentially an interesting project, and perhaps we can get somebody associated with it to come and speak.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
yeah,
just an example of something where you just stumble upon something interesting and then try to find a contact, reach out to them, and get something going.
Yeah, and I think another strategy for that is to leave a GitHub issue on the repository. So it is open source. Most of the projects we have come present are open source. So just leaving a GitHub issue that says hey, would you like to present at the IoT Edge working group? Like, we think your project's very interesting, is one way. So people have done that for Operate in the past, and that's been helpful. We could also do that with our Edge landscape. So going through the projects there.
Yeah. Here's a thought that just occurred to me. Maybe we should just open a spreadsheet. We'll label it as speaker queue for CNCF IoT Edge working group. And, with the idea that somebody who wants to submit in the future could throw their name down there with some contact information. But members who are interested in a topic could perhaps nominate something that doesn't have a speaker identified yet, but just, submit a topic that they're interested in hearing a presentation on, and we could work with it from there. But just a central point where we can keep track of all the prospective upcoming speakers. Something like this Open Bow project, for example, it obviously isn't a slated talk, but something we just put in the queue is something we're interested in.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting. And then people can also add to that spreadsheet whenever they want. And if they don't feel comfortable reaching out, they can at least add a request that way.
Yeah. Okay. I'm willing, since you're doing the taking lead on that maintainer track proposal, I'll try to get together a template for a speaker perspective list as a Google spreadsheet, and we'll follow up on that idea at a future meeting. But I'll put together the skeleton of it and share it with the group as a shared document.
Awesome. Thank you.
DM is sent a message. He has
Sorry,
some
I didn't.
update. Liam has sent some message in the channel saying he has an update or something.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you said.
I heard him. He said that Liam Randall has an update in the CNCF IoT Edge Slack channel, and that he just messaged us there and saying that he has an update to share, but cannot get on the call. And he's typing currently, so I can vocalize it as it comes through. He said that Sony said that they'll come to present to us about what they're doing with the embedded WASM IoT Edge stuff.
That sounds really good. I met with them at KubeCon North America, and they did say they were interested. I think a lot of that is that Mitakura project that they've been saying they were going to open source.
Yep, that's definitely it. And they presented at WasmCon too. And yeah, so I think great. Well, then we can see if we can plot them on the meeting list. And just ask them when they want to present, because obviously it's very open.
Yeah. And I think that in terms of this, it obviously during the holiday periods, and I'd include by that in Asia, the Lunar New Year is a big holiday period too. It's pretty tough to get speakers. Plus, even if you were to get them, the attendance is usually low. So you're not exactly offering great slots if, during the December January timeframe. In fact, I think that's why even on the physical conference circuit, very few people attempt to hold physical conferences during later December and through January. So maybe we'll get this kicked off starting in a February like time frame, I think, in terms of these guest speakers.
Yeah, that makes sense. And prioritize the in-between time of just like creating a lineup of speakers.
Right.
Well, do folks have other things that have been on their radar or any updates that they want to give? We can always end at the half hour too, if we feel like we've covered everything for today.
Yeah, the only things I had were those comments I dropped in the chat on. I think that OpenBow project seems really interesting. I haven't had time to work through it, but Open Source Summit Japan just ended last week, but that typically is very heavy on edge talks. So I have a feeling there's likely to be a few other interesting ones in there. So I'll be going back over it when I get time, but others might be interested in it. The other things I found interesting lately was that there was a morning of lightning talks hosted by the TinyML organization last week, and it was really good. A lot of them were vendor talks, but given that they were short lightning talks, there wasn't too much sales pitch crammed down your throat, and it was entirely focused on AI and ML at Edge. And I'm assuming that they'll publish a recording of those things. I watched it live, so I did try to find a recording, but that TinyML group, in my experience, does publish those things. So I'd recommend anybody interested in the ML aspect to go back and look for that.
Awesome.
Anyway, that's all I had.
Great,
if
thanks,
we're going to
Steve.
close early, Kate, if you wouldn't mind staying on a little extra, there's something I'd like to discuss.
Sure, that sounds good. Well, I think we can cap it there. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And thanks for coming, Leon and Joel and Steve. And yeah, see y'all next time.
Okay.